Welcome to Winter Grace Senior Ministries. I am Debbie Bergio. As we know, grief and loss is a part of our journey in life, and oftentimes we need someone to walk with us through it, help us address it, and we are fortunate to be joined today by Lisa Boxall of Mindful Transitions Counseling. Lisa is a licensed mental health provider, a pastoral counselor, and a national certified counselor. Lisa, we are just so thankful that you are here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're talking about grief and loss today, something that I'm sure everyone has dealt with. How did you find yourself coming into this line of work?
Well, I think for me, it began as when I was volunteering on a hospice inpatient unit. I would go weekly to kind of be with the, both the families and support them if somebody was dying, and I would often sometimes just sit with the person that was ill or dying, and I got a tremendous amount of knowledge and respect for the process, and a lot of curiosity came out of that for me. I was there supporting the families in the dying process, and I thought, well, what happens to them when this is over? You know, what kind of support do they have? Right now, they're flooded with support. They have a team working with them. They have nurses and doctors and maybe palliative care, chaplains, volunteers. And I kept wondering, well, what happens when this is over? Who supports them? So, concurrently, I was entering into a master's program at Loyola University for mental health counseling and pastoral counseling. And we had to do an internship, and I actually returned back to Stella Maris and asked if I could join their bereavement team as an intern. So I did, and that kind of really ignited my fire for deciding to work in grief and loss. I found it a very sacred space to be in with families, and journeying that journey with people, like I said, was a very just exquisite experience, and I felt a very necessary part of their continued grief process, not just when the person died, but continuing to get support to these people afterwards. So that's how it all started for me, and I ended up working there for a little while, and now I have a private practice.
So I know we've been saying about grief and loss, but there's so much more in the loss area. We don't think of, when we think about the words grief and loss, we think about someone's passing and dealing with that and however we might. But especially right now, we are learning that there are many more different kinds of grief and loss.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up and bringing that to light. I think with COVID right now, a lot of loss is going unrealized in people. So they may be experiencing the same symptoms of a physical, if they would have a physical loss, they might be experiencing some very common symptoms of grief, but thinking, well, I don't know why I'm feeling this way because no one around me has died. So why am I sad, and why am I angry, and why am I irritable, and why do I want to withdraw? All, again, classic grief symptoms. They probably are feeling these symptoms because of all that, I call them the non-physical losses that we are all and have experienced this last year, i.e. loss of being with family, loss of maybe going to work, loss of seeing friends, loss of doing everything that we've all have not been able to do in the past year. Those are all losses, and they can and do elicit grief feelings, but people don't understand that. And it's really important for me to kind of get the message out to others. That is a normal response to loss, and it's okay that you're feeling that way, but if it really does become intrusive, to kind of seek help. Don't withdraw, do not isolate, reach out to either a professional, family member, clergy, or friend to discuss it.
I really appreciate that, because I'm also thinking a word that keeps coming into my mind is people who haven't experienced a physical loss, then they're feeling guilty because they feel anger and sadness and things. So it's right. But to know that those are normal feelings to feel in this kind of situation that we're in, that is just so helpful.
Yes, it's very normal, and guilt is another grief response. So again, it can become confusing to people. If they're not connected with others, then they start thinking, well, something must be wrong with me because I'm
Hmm.
feeling all these feelings, and then they decide to withdraw from people and isolate. And then you can run the risk of, really becoming depressed. So, I'm here to say there's nothing wrong with you. You probably are experiencing grief connected to non-physical loss that we have all experienced this year. And, please connect with somebody to discuss that.
And I know one of the areas of your practice that you is expanding is taking care of caregivers, which is always a tremendously stressful position to be in. And now that's even exacerbated even more by being isolated. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So the other kind of niche I'm in besides grief and loss, which kind of comes hand in hand, is I work with people experiencing what I call late life transitions for older adults. So let's say they maybe have retired and have lost a spouse. So then they find themselves not working anymore without the spouse they've been with maybe for 50 years. And there's a lot of loss wrapped up in that. You're looking at sometimes older adults that have had to leave the home they might have been in for 50 or 40 years to move closer to maybe an adult child because they want to kind of help take care of them. So I do work with that niche, as well as an offshoot of that is caregivers. So in caregiving, there is a tremendous amount of non-physical loss associated with that role, because typically when somebody's caregiving for somebody who's either maybe terminally ill or has some kind of disease like dementia or Parkinson's, that person loses a lot of themselves. They lose a lot of their identity because now they have had to kind of put everything off to the side to caregive to their loved one. And I often hear about people in that role that have lost being able to be with friends, being able to go and, do things because they can't leave their loved one alone. And like you said, it's been exacerbated by the fact that any services that these people might have had for their loved one, i.e. a daycare, some kind of residential program that they can go into, those have all been halted. So now senior centers have wonderful programs. All their day programs have been closed down. So now you have a caregiver that has no respite, and they can't, because of COVID, if they're older, and most of my caregivers are, they can't even have people come in to help from the agencies because they're afraid of giving their loved one COVID or they getting COVID. So we have a tremendous amount of isolation and a tremendous amount of loss embroiled in that isolation. They've lost, their ability, they've lost a lot of their freedom, these caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, they are mounting intense grief responses, but they're feeling very guilty about these grief responses because the person is still with them. They feel like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really important to know that, again, those are valid and healthy responses. And not to feel bad about it, but to kind of reach out to others, whether it be a support group that's online, a counselor, a clergy member, and talk about your feelings in this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Can you share a little bit, like if someone decides that they want to see you, like what is that process like? And like, I know you can't give a specific, like do this, this, and this, but what are some of the things that you address? Or how do you go about that?
So if they wanted to kind of come in and well, first of all, I do have a website. It's mindfultransitions.org, and they can hop on that and just read a little bit about me and my background. But I always offer free phone consultations. I think it's very important. I tell everybody who's looking for a counselor, you need to interview the counselor because the counselor has to be a fit for you. So if they don't offer a phone consultation, I kind of say, well, maybe you should move to, others that do. So I always offer a free phone consultation. And in that time, you can, certainly call me on the phone, or we can do a Zoom and, just kind of talk about your situation, what you're looking for out of counseling, what you're struggling with at the time. Just a basic short phone call to see if it is a fit and I can provide the services that you're looking for. And then from there, we would set up an intake appointment, which is usually about an hour and 15 minutes. And right now, my office building is closed to the public, but we just got an email yesterday saying they're working on reopening. So I'm hoping that in the next couple months, we're going to start being able to see clients live again. But right now I'm doing everything with telehealth.
I know that before COVID, you were having group caregiving groups. Are you able to do that on Zoom now, or are you?
I am not. I was doing grief support groups, which, yes, and I am going to be branching into caregiver support groups because there's such a need for it, especially coming out of COVID. No, I have not resumed those. I do not do those online because it's my groups are a lot of hands-on. We do a lot of hands-on things that would not be conducive to doing it on Zoom. But I'm hoping if everything goes the way it looks like it's going for all of us, I'm hoping by the fall to resume those. And those are 6 week, they're 6 weeks, they meet once a week. I take about 5 to 6 people in a group because I feel the experience should be intimate and private. And I like to allow each person enough time to share if they would like to. And, I do separate, if I can, I might have a loss of spouse group, a loss of loved one group, a caregiver support group. So, yeah, I'm hoping that resumes in the fall.
Absolutely. So we decide we want to come and work with you, and we do go through this process. You are kind of in a unique niche in our area, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm going to build you. I just talking with Lisa. For everyone who's watching, I mean, Lisa's just as genuine and easy to talk to as she is on this, even so more so on this conversation. So I know that you fill a niche in this area that is really needed. And
I think so. And I think, working with my older adults, they're not socialized to counseling like other, maybe other people are. And it's important. It's important for them to feel comfortable with me. So usually the first couple times we're together, we're just kind of getting to know each other, and it's relaxed and it's laid back, and there's a lot of conversation, and that's what it's about for me. Like I want the person to feel safe, and because if they're going to be opening up to me with their emotions and their feelings, they have to feel that it's a safe space. And that is my top priority, to make people feel safe in the space where we share when we get together.
Of course. Lisa, is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't touched on that you would like folks to know?
No, I think we kind of covered it all. Like I said, I should add that I currently do not take any insurance, but I do offer a sliding scale, when appropriate. So, again, that can all be talked about in the consult. But, my advice to anybody is if it's not me and you're struggling with kind of new emotions that you haven't experienced and they kind of have emerged in this past year, to consider that you might be mourning and you might be grieving a lot of losses. And so definitely, don't isolate. Like I said, if it's not with me, reach out, to somebody. So to stay connected is really important right now.
Okay, I'm going to finish up. I want to go back just a minute. You talked about signs before, and I was wondering if you could or changes, if you could just maybe share that list again so people say, oh, keeping that list in mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, very common grief responses that people don't understand are grief responses. Sometimes irritability is one. Anger could be one. You're just really kind of short-tempered and angry a lot. Obviously, being tearful is very common. Just fluctuating in moods, like if you're kind of like 1 minute okay, and the next minute you're just upset. Change in emotional state, a quick change. Sleeping disruption is really big. So like a
Mm.
lot of people are really struggling right now. You know, I don't sleep anymore. I'm just worried about my job. I'm worried about what I call re-entry as we come out of this pandemic. So sleep, any kind of change in sleep or eating habits, feelings of guilt maybe, and just feeling like you want to isolate and withdraw. If these are all emergent for you and you haven't, generally experienced this, my guess is, like I said, you might be experiencing grief symptoms related to non-physical loss as a result of the pandemic or other reasons.
Okay. Thank you for going back over that list again. I just think it's so important to point out. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of our event. All of your contact information is on your page on our website. So I just encourage folks to listen and read and be aware, and to remember that if you're feeling not yourself, it's not that there's something wrong with you. Might be something else going on.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Debbie.
Thanks, Lisa. Take care.
Take care.